Hey everybody, welcome to Musings. This is where I just kind of go solo and think out loud about stuff that's kind of on my mind that I, for whatever reason, crosses my attention, I guess. And today, I feel like it's just a series of fortunate accidents, zeitgeist maybe. I start looking into one thing and then somehow it's like the universe answers and delivers stuff to me. So for me, I started thinking about appraisal, right? And I'm a real estate, expert, I guess, if that's what I am, which I think simply means I have an idea as to what I just don't know. But I'm not like super familiar with appraisal, right? I'm not an appraiser. I've never, worked as an appraiser. Like I've actually, with all of my clients, I've never had like an appraisal or appraisal institute or appraiser as a client. So I don't know the real details. Having said that, I started thinking about it because, as some of you know, I'm very interested in things like blockchain, technology, Defi, and an issue came up in terms of appraisal. And this has always been an issue. I remember giving a presentation to a group of home inspectors last year talking about the problem of verifying reality. But in any event, so I'm looking into appraisals and I get sent something by a reader, by a friend, saying, hey, you probably want to check this out. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to tackle this. I think the first place I'll tackle is I wrote a red dot paper 2 years ago, I guess, talking about the iBuying business model and looking at AVMs, these sort of algorithms, computer programs that are automatically generating property values, right? Automatic valuation machines. And there's, I don't know, there's probably dozens of them, in the marketplace now. The most famous is obviously Zestimate. We know that the way that the whole iBuying business model works is you're trying to save a lot of time and money by using AVMs to run some sort of at least an initial valuation of some property that someone's willing to sell. Then you have to supplement it with, in-person visits, physical inspection, etc. This is much in the news because when Zillow exited the offers business, one of the things they said was we had a difficult time. Turns out that our models weren't, to our level of satisfaction in terms of accuracy in predicting sort of future price movements. So, that's like a whole other topic that potentially we could get into. But what I started looking at back then in 2018 was just asking a really straightforward, simple question. Like, how accurate are these AVMs, right? Like, how accurate is this estimate? How accurate is the Redfin estimate? How accurate are these things? So that we could at least have some ideas to what we're talking about, right? I mean, if they're, 30% off, then yeah, that's probably not useful to anybody. But if they're 3% off, then they're probably pretty useful. Anyway, so I'm researching this. I'm starting to look into it, and I run across this video from let's see, Housing Wire, and it's an hour-long panel discussion. They call it a lunch and learn, and I'm gonna put it up right now, share it with you guys, because there's a section of it that I think is worth kind of listening to together and then just thinking about it. So here we go. Let's see. All right. So lunch and learn, the role of appraisers in the future of valuation. Now, the panel goes into a lot of different things. They talk about COVID, they talk about technology, they talk about, demographics, if you will, in the sense that there are fewer and fewer people entering the appraisal industry. So they're just talking about all sorts of topics that are of real interest to them. But this one segment was sort of interesting to me. And it's a gentleman by the name of Paul Doman from Accurate Group, talking about AVMs and sort of what is the role of appraiser when these things exist. So take a minute and listen to what they're saying.
I think you're spot on in many ways.
Hopefully you can hear that.
One of the things you really got to think about, one thing I think you're spot on is that AVMs are here to stay. AVMs are valuing thousands upon thousands of properties a month for purposes of loan origination. That is happening every single day, every single minute of this day.
Let me pause there. Think about what you just said, that AVMs are being used right now, today, for thousands and thousands of valuations for loan origination. Okay, keep that in mind.
So you got to talk about what are the problems with AVMs. They're not an all for nothing proposition. One of the fundamental issues with AVMs is they assume, fundamentally, everyone assumes that the property is in average condition. And this might have been, I don't know what the Zillow issue was, but this might have been part of the problem. Using AVMs based on the assumption that properties are in average condition without actually validating the property's condition can be a significant risk.
Okay. So the first thing that I'll say there is, I don't know that that was Zillow's problem. And again, they were talking about in the context of that because every one of these iBuyers, Zillow included, sent someone along to validate. In other words, the AVM that might have assumed some average condition spits out a number. And in every case, there would be some in-person visit to verify the level, right? So I'm not sure that that was the problem with Zillow. But again, that's like a minor thing. But what he sort of says on is interesting as well.
Particularly if you're being adversely selected and people are only willing to sell you homes that are not in very good condition, which might have also happened to Zillow. So you always have to combine an AVM with some type of data capture that gives you the current condition of the property.
Okay. That's the important piece, right? So this is someone, I gather Accurate Group is probably an appraiser, from the appraisal industry, discussing the role of appraisers in the future valuation, suggesting that, yeah, AVMs are good. They work, and loan origination, like lenders are using AVMs to make loan origination decisions. However, his point is you always have to combine an AVM with something else that verifies, various things that like a computer program or whatever data source are available can't pick up. Things like condition of the property. I know in some other things they talked about like, condition of the area, the neighborhood, maybe stuff that's not immediately visible from just property photos or floor plans. A lot of truth to that. They ain't taking nothing away from any of that. However, again, as I mentioned, I was doing some deep dives. So I found, when this came along, right? So I found this paper called, let's see. And again, I'm going to share this paper with you all as well. All right, so I'm going to share this. Let's see if this works. Okay. So I found this paper called The State of Automated Valuation Models in the Age of Big Data. And this is from the Mortgage Bankers Association. So I guess we have to take that into account, right? In the sense that, like, consider the source. The previous sort of panel, we are talking to, at least one person from the MBA, but again, someone from the appraisal side of things, who obviously have a vested interest in making sure that bankers, potentially use, appraisers, right? Use something on top of the AVM. But according to the MBA, and this was done in 2019, there it is, right? January 2019. So it's not like some super old thing, right? This is relatively recent, and they're talking about where is going on with AVMs, with technology. They call it the age of big data, but basically we're talking about technology advances, more availability of data and so on. And here's sort of their big takeaway. Let me see if I could enlarge this a little bit okay. So this paragraph here is super interesting, right? AVM performance has dramatically improved over the past decade, alongside increases in the availability and integrity of real estate data and advances in modeling, database, and data-related technologies. Stakeholders need to understand the current state and trends of this important valuation tool if they wish to compete in a more efficient mortgage processing world. So right off the top, the MBA paper is telling us that at least in their analysis and their judgment, AVMs have dramatically improved and they're pretty damn good. Right? Now, you could read the whole paper and dig into it. But here's the next thing I sort of thought. Because they kind of agree with what Mr. Doman said, right? Should a lender choose to go the route of an evaluation, AVMs paired with property inspection in order to address a property's current physical condition as required, provide a valid method. All right. So the MBA is not saying just rely on an AVM, right? You have to do AVM plus physical condition. Now, here's the interesting thing. Why? Right, why? Because it's not just like some lender randomly deciding, well, we're going to use an AVM and we have to do a physical inspection as well. The key is this notion, this phrase right here, right? As required. As required by whom? Right? And the answer is, of course, as required by the GSEs, Fannie, Freddie, whoever, who have to sort of approve, and back up a loan, right? Otherwise, you can't sell into them. And this paper goes into a lot of depth about that. And I don't think it's really relevant. But the important part that I thought, the next place to kind of stop, I guess, in this musing is this right here. Okay. So again, they're referring to a paper written back in 2009. And writing this paper in 2019, their point is that it's improved even past when this conclusion was reached in the 2009 paper. But the 2009 paper, here's what it says. No appraisal or other evaluation product has undergone the rigorous level of testing and scrutiny as AVMs. The performance of AVMs in both appreciating and declining markets has demonstrated their level of accuracy and the unbiased nature of their results when compared to other valuation techniques. For example, human appraisal would be another valuation technique. Experience has shown that with all other performance factors held equal, loans underwritten with AVMs have outperformed similar loans underwritten utilizing appraisals or other evaluation methods. What that says, at least to me, and again, if you're an appraiser, if you have a lot more knowledge of this, then please comment, let me know, write me emails, whatever you want. But what that says to me is at least that paper and what the MBA paper in 2019 is sort of backing up is AVMs are superior to human appraisal. Loans underwritten with AVMs have outperformed similar loans underwritten utilizing appraisals. Wow. Wow. So if that's true, then what is the role of an appraiser, right, in the future evaluation? In this context, the reason I wanted to do this musing is because, like I said, a reader sent me something that's like today via email, which I've been kind of predicting for a little bit, but it's sort of finally happened. It's like, wow, this is big news. So here's the news. Okay. Let me go find that. All right. The news is, bang, Fannie Mae about desktop appraisals. Basically, and I think this just came out January 22nd. So no, I guess it's good. January 22nd. January 22. I'm sorry, not 22nd. January 2022, meaning this month. I think this came out like a couple days ago. Basically, what Fannie is saying is you can now do appraisals using AVMs without any physical, it's literally called desktop appraisal, right? Why? Why is Fannie Mae adopting this? Well, here it is in yellow. May reduce confirmation bias. Mitigates appraiser capacity constraints. I mean, this is just a reality, right? I mean, appraisal industry has been warning for, at least a decade that we're just not seeing enough people wanting to become appraisers. So we're going to have a problem. Not enough people could actually do appraisals. And then this piece, rigorous testing shows similar risk performance compared to traditional appraisals. That's not as radical as what the other paper was claiming, which was that AVMs outperform other sort of traditional appraisals. What Fannie is saying is it's similar risk performance. Okay. So what does that mean? And this is, again, read the whole thing if you want. This is called About Desktop Appraisals Fact Sheet. I'm sure you could Google it. Fannie just released it this month. And this is what it talks about. So, you go through a desktop underwriter, you use Fannie's system basically. It tells you, hey, this particular loan, this particular property is eligible for desktop appraisal. Okay. When you get that, then you do an appraisal and use form 1004 desktop. I don't know what that means. I mean, you appraisers probably do, but this is the important part. No physical inspection of the subject property. Say that again. No physical inspection of the subject property. Remember, in the video, Paul Doman was talking about you always have to, AVMs are great, they're fine, but you always have to wrap that with some sort of physical inspection to validate and to verify things like physical condition and so on. Here's Fannie literally saying no physical inspection of the subject property. Data may be provided by various parties, the buyer, seller, agent, homeowner, builder, appraiser files, etc. In other words, the appraiser using this can rely on someone else telling them like physical condition. Like, okay. And then the rest of it, must include floor plans, interior walls, appraiser, blah, blah, blah. And here we go. And then this I thought was interesting. Certification 10 allow appraiser to accept information about the transaction from someone with a financial interest. And the answer is yes. So basically what this is saying is, look, typically as an appraiser, you're supposed to be neutral. You're supposed to be disinterested. Like you can't get paid, based on like the price of the home or whatever. Like it's supposed to be real neutral. Like this is what I think it's worth. What this says is, okay, since there's no physical inspection and I'm just doing it using whatever data, can I use data that is coming from someone who has a vested financial interest? And the answer is yes. Provided the appraiser verifies the information through a disinterested source, such as aerial maps, assessor data, virtual inspection technologies. I think this is pretty freaking huge. And then, you have this number 7. Do homeowner provided photos require verification? And the answer is it can verify using MLS listings or with a live virtual walkthrough. So presumably you tell the homeowner, walk around with your iPhone and, et cetera. And I'll take photos of your iPhone. I don't know exactly how that works, but you could easily see this technology existing, right? Where the appraiser doesn't have to drive out anywhere and spend all this time. It's like, hello, Mr. Homeowner, I'm appraising your house. Please walk around, show me your kitchen. And that's good enough for Fannie, which is that whole required, right? Like, AVMs are great, but you have to have physical inspection as required. Required by whom? Required by Fannie. Well, here's Fannie saying physical inspection is no longer required. You have to do some verification, disinterested data source, etc. Physical inspection not required. So, as I'm thinking about this feels like a pretty big deal. This feels like a potentially pretty big deal. Let me put it that way. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe no one's going to use this. But the reason why I guess I feel like it's a pretty big deal is, like, what's the point of an appraisal at all, right? Like, who uses an appraisal? It's actually typically not the parties. It's not the buyer and the seller. They might do a home inspection, but that's not, like, there's different things. Who uses an appraisal, as far as I understand it, again, if I'm wrong, please let me know, is the lender, right? Because all they want to know is, hey, should I make a loan on this property? And if so, then at what interest rate and what term, blah, 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 right? Okay, well, mortgages are all secured loans. And you're secured, the collateral that's securing that loan is the property. So really, at the end of the day, all the lender wants to know is this property worth what I think it's worth so that I can make a loan on it and do my risk assessment? Right, which then directly translates to whether you want to make the loan at all, what the LTV is going to be, in other words, like how much down payment the borrower is going to have to put down, and what the interest rate is. It's just math. And I think one of the issues that I have with this when talking sort of within the industry in the past is, people saying things like this estimate is completely inaccurate, you can't trust these AVMs. But I guess if you're talking to a buyer or seller, right, then that criticism maybe carries a little bit more force. Because the whole idea is, look, if the appraisal is off by 2% on a $500,000 house, that's like what, $1,000? Like, as a buyer, maybe I care a great deal and I want it super accurate. I want it as accurate as possible. But if it's 2% and really the person using the appraisal is the loan officer, it's just a lender. And all I need to know is like, okay, this guy wants a 80 LTV loan, $400,000 on a $500,000 house. Is the house worth 500,000? If it's worth 498,000, is that going to change my loan decision? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty close, right? So, I guess the point I'm making is this, and this I'll try and tie this to why I got interested. If the whole point of appraisal, whether it's through a human being doing, whatever, super walkthroughs and real detailed expert appraisal, or an AVM, or some AVM plus, drone shots overhead, whatever the method is, the whole point of an appraisal is to help a lender make a decision as to whether they're going to lend or not. It seems to me that that's entirely dependent on that lender's risk tolerance. And a lot of times, as we see, the risk tolerance is going to be dependent on whether Fannie and Freddie will buy that loan from you. Well, we've crossed some sort of Rubicon, I think. Fannie's saying, hey, just give me a desktop appraisal. No physical inspection required. It's good enough. It's good enough. We will buy that loan that you've done using AVMs because it's good enough. And if it's good enough for us, then it surely is going to be good enough for you, which means you will make those decisions. That opens the door to a level of automation in financing, which then says a level of automation in the transaction that has not existed until now. And specifically, I think this could be really important for whatever the future brings, right? Things like blockchain, DeFi mortgage, things like crypto loans, things like any of these new financial instruments that all sorts of companies are working on, where one of the key questions underlying is going to be, what is this house worth? And it may be that we don't need to think like, okay, well, you might have all this fancy ass technology and AI and big data, but you know what? The home, to really appraise the house, you better do it the traditional way and walk around and look at. Maybe not. Maybe not, y'all, because desktop appraisal, right? No need for physical inspection. As long as you have the data, the AVMs are accurate enough. They're accurate enough for lenders. They will make loan decisions based on that alone. And that seems really like potentially a big deal to me. We'll see how this plays out, I guess, in the months and years ahead. But yeah. But that's why I wanted to make this musings video, because it was so like fortuitous, everything happening. And I'm going, this is kind of a potentially important topic. And I'm in the business of musing about what this could mean for the transaction, for the industry as a whole. And I think it could potentially mean something big. Love to know what you think about it, especially if you are an appraiser, or if you're in the appraisal industry. I mean, certainly let me know what I'm missing. Because again, they're just, three little pieces, and I'm certainly not going to pretend like I know everything about appraisal. And understand, I'm not trying to knock your value. Like, I'm just reporting on what's happening. So yeah, let me know. Thanks for listening. Bye, y'all.